lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And much of what we've been discussing over the past couple of days is really about the inner life. There are two worlds, really, in which, if we really think about it, in which we live. There's the outside world and the inner world, and we don't really have all that much control regarding the outside world, but we do have an enormous amount of power with what goes on inside of us and how we interpret and our perspective and so on. And much of what we've been studying over the past couple of days is quite simply about how to manage what is going on the inside. And many times, at least, it's taken me years to discover, at least in myself, how I have messed things up inside. Whether it's something as simple as perspective, how many times have we just thought one thing and we just knew it was going to end up one way and it didn't end up that way at all? That's really a commentary on what's going on the inside. So let's take a look where we kind of left off yesterday. We were talking about really 48 ways in which the rabbis are expressing on how to acquire Torah, or like I said over the course of this past week, how we acquire something spiritual. How do we acquire it? And we started off study, attentive listening, verbal articulation, and an understanding heart. So we're on number 5 if you're keeping count. If you're not, don't worry, I'll keep count for you. And so this, it starts off with we ended up with an understanding heart, and now we're going to get into a few more things. The fifth one is well, here it says sochlut halev, and this is I want to talk about sechel. That's a word. There's many different words for knowledge. There's many different words for understanding. There's many different words for education and knowledge. And what do they really mean? There are certain things, we get information all the time. You and I are constantly getting information. If you're on Facebook, if you're on any social media, if you're on any TV, aren't we constantly just being bombarded with information? And that's stuff that we can just put away and use, but that doesn't make anyone any more wise, does it? It means you've just accumulated quite a bit of knowledge. And that's really kind of, in a lot of ways, what we have really celebrated, at least in our world, is somebody who's able to have knowledge and regurgitate it, right? We see it in schools, we see it in universities, we see it really everywhere, even in rabbinical school, we see it in our Hebrew schools, is that there's almost a level of you take in information, and if you can put out the information, then you have a knowledge of it, material kind of, it's in there, but that doesn't necessarily capture all of the word knowledge, isn't that right? There's even knowledge that is happening unbeknownst to us. The knowledge of your body, quite simply, to be able to breathe without you even knowing it, right? There's things going on within us on a very a cellular level that is very wise, so to speak. So, anyways, there's that, and then there is also just a wisdom, an understanding of life, of being. You've met someone that just kind of maybe has settled and understands, and they just get it, right? Maybe there's that kind of thing, but there's also people that just they're in tune with things, right? That doesn't mean this person is in tune with everything. There's people that are in tune with this, in tune with that, right? What is that? And so the only reason I'm bringing up is that let's not get stuck into like knowledge is just the book knowledge. I read something, I'm able to regurgitate it, right? Which is oftentimes what we he's very knowledgeable in a certain subject, that might be, but isn't there other kinds of knowledge? And that's what they're going to talk about here, is that there's also this sechel, some kind of, there's bina, there's sechel, there's chokhmah, there's different ways in which to understand. And so here there's just a distinction between an understanding heart and then one who has really a what's the word here? Kind of a sechel, meaning I call it almost street smarts. That there's inherently there's a sense of you, almost the sixth sense, right? That you just kind of know. I'll give you another example. If you were like a baby, doesn't a young, um, a child know where their mouth is when they eat. Nobody taught them that, right? They just know. Even in the womb, you've seen children or babies or before they're even born, sucking on their thumb. They know that that's the place where something is supposed to be consumed. So if there's even on a just a basic level, you don't even need someone to teach you that. You don't need a book to read it, right? You just know. And so there is part of that when it talks about that heart, that sechel, that part of that you just need to be in tune with. That doesn't mean you need to know it. Doesn't mean you need to have all the answers. Just be in tune with that. And I think oftentimes we suppress that quite a bit. Much of spirituality, as I've shared before, much of a spiritual life is about reduction, removing those things that are blocking us from being the best person that we can possibly be, from growth. You know, the old adage about you know, a goldfish will only grow in the aquarium to its size. It would keep going. I don't know how apocryphal that is, but the truth is that there is truth in that. That we are limited to the environment that we live internally, and how many boundaries do we place on ourselves. And spirituality is really about removing those boundaries to allow our true self to kind of shine. So part of that is the sechel, is allowing the sechel, that part of our wisdom, to really come out. We've quieted that quite a bit, you know, and we do that all the time. We quiet it all the time. In the ways that I quiet that part of my wisdom, that part is you know, done by many distractions, whether it's the phone, whether it's reading, whether, I mean, there's a lot of different distractions certainly in this world. Okay, so let's move on to the next piece. Five, there is Ema Beira. These are two different ways of fear. Fear, you know, but fear is not really a great a word. It's more kind of just like one's being a deep respect for life, the awesomeness of life, and the other is one in which the really how do you put this in terms of, and this is how I do it. It's just like you may not physically want to, you know, what's the you may not physically or even spiritually or even mentally at all times be aware of the awesomeness that is life, but there's a fundamental understanding that is what it is, that there is something incredible about being alive. There is something incredible about, here they use it as dread, but there is just an awesomeness away. Think about the moment that you realized your own mortality, right? That you have a limited amount of time. That feeling of just, my gosh, there's something much bigger here. That at a lot of times, again, we kind of silence, but that feeling of just seeing that there is so much more, and realizing that life isn't just limited, right? We all have had this feeling, but it's kind of maybe fleeting at times, and then we get in our daily living, and but that's really what this awe is, that awesomeness. And being in touch with that, and that's much of what Jewish liturgy is about, is to get in touch with that awesomeness, that awe. That's, you know, obviously that's where the word awesome comes from, is that awe of how amazing, how beautiful, how large, how insignificant on one level we are as people, but then on the other hand, we are the almost the pinnacle, at least, of creation on this earth, at least on this earth. Who knows what other planets? Maybe maybe there's you know, higher life forms there. Who knows? So we're going to end with that, because there's two things here that talks about humility, and then or at least next week we'll pick up with number 8. But that's the 7, is the humility. What is humility? I often and here it's anava. So we talk about that awesomeness when you truly are in that sense of awe, that sense of awesomeness, that sense of respect, and that sense of responsibility, a great sense of responsibility about being alive, right? It's not just about survival. It's about that this is life. L'chaim is that this is such an integral part in our lives, is that sense in humanity where we're trying to grow into something. When we have that, that's when we are in touch with humility. and anava. But are those moments fleeting throughout the day? Are those moments in which we are trying to connect with them on a regular basis? Remember that we're trying to acquire something. We're trying to seek something. That's what this whole thing was about: is how does one acquire Torah? How does one acquire spirituality? The assumption is that you want to. The assumption is that when we're in these places of deep uh, um, awe, right, is that it will bring us to humility, and then we can truly begin to seek in a little different way. So here's to this weekend. May we find time actually over the course of the next, at least Shabbat's tonight, maybe find some time over the course of the next 24 hours to really reflect on kind of that inner life. We started off with the outside life and that inner life, and then we look at the inner life in a way in which really brings out that awe and brings out that humility. So want to wish you a good Shabbos. Next week we'll pick up with my favorite part of how to connect, and join us next week as we kind of explore a little bit of that. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, long weekend.